Let's finish it.
Ay, coming in, flex. I just wanna win, LABB, who we running with, 2233, I'm on 10 again, state your name.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of The Closing Pitch. My name is Spiker Helms. Across from me is David Birkby, the man of extraordinary abilities. Today, we are going to be talking about a winter training plan. And the characters that I want to bring into this storyline is the coach, the parent, the single sport athlete, and the multi-sport athlete. We all want to build from 2020. We are literally in the fourth quarter of 2020. We're heading into 2021. Thank God. Everyone's probably thinking that right now.
It's going to be the best New Year's celebration ever.
Yes. And no matter if you're starting from ground zero where you didn't have a spectacular year, or you are the MVP of your team, or you were always in Championship Sunday, if you are a person that loves growth and wants to live that winning lifestyle, you're constantly thinking about, how do I get better? That's just human nature. That's competition. If you're doing that, you're in a really good spot. So what I want to address, though, is that there's a problem here, which is we're not actively deciding, researching, networking, and finding out what we need to do when December and January hits. A lot of players that I've seen in lessons this past October and November, I've asked, hey, what's your goals? What are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? What's the next step? What are we trying to do? I want to get you there. I want to develop power. I want to develop speed. And for me, I've noticed that this year has been different because I draw myself back a little bit. In years past, that's literally the speech I gave them when they hopped into the cage, because I wanted them to get excited about winter training. Now I've kind of drawn back the reins and I want to see, okay, are they really thinking in this direction? Because I'm at that point in my instruction career where I have a solid base of clients. I rarely accept new clients into my lesson schedule. I have a solid base of guys that I love working with, and they're my dudes and my gals. I got a number of softball players too. And when they hopped in the cage, it's been at that level of, I want to see what they're going to say. And majority of the time, guess what it is?
Whatever you tell me to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now I'll have some players like, I want to get more power. I want to get more speed.
The easy answer.
I want to throw harder. I want to throw harder. Not, hey, I had a problem here. These were the problem areas that I had. I need to address this because I have a feeling that I'm going to see more of this next year. Now, again, being young, being naive, it's hard to think that way. But as instructors, as coaches, as parents, we have to push them forward. We have to think about what is it that they really need, and which is, I need to get them thinking in that direction.
Well, you know what's funny? So this time of the year, this time frame, because I teach on the pitching side, okay? So normally most of my guys shut down the month of November, even late October. Once they're done with fall ball, they kind of shut down. And then when they start trickling back in here towards the end of November, December, I always have the same talk every year. So I've had some guys that I've had for 8-10 years now. They know what's coming. They know what to expect. But when I have new guys, or even, a couple of years down the road, I literally say the same thing every time when I see them first, okay? I go, okay, let's establish a plan for winter. What do you want to get better at? I get crickets. Throw harder. Throw more accurate. I'm like, okay, I get that. That's easy. Easy answer, right? Let's look back. Let's take a look back at your last year, your spring, your summer, your fall seasons. Tell me some things you did really well. What do we grow on? They can't really answer it. Okay, tell me some things you failed at. Tell me some things that you really didn't have that you'd like to get better at. Maybe it's a certain pitch or certain accuracy, or you need to do whatever it might be. What do you need to get better at? Crickets. They don't have answers.
And you addressed we've talked about this before, and you mentioned it right before we hopped on the mics and said, you know what? It feels like this freshman class is way different than any other freshman class. And I totally agree with that. And each year, the freshman class gets a little bit weaker on this area. Now we've got some talented players.
Yeah,
there are some
no,
really. I think this class, just in general, from the guys that I'm seeing, I'm really excited about this group. Now the thing that worries me though is that the whole COVID-19 situation, they weren't able to have that typical freshman semester, that first semester where they get a reality check. They're no longer eighth graders. They're no longer at the top of the totem pole. They didn't get that interaction where a senior comes up and just shoves them into the lockers or hazes them for a little bit. They don't have that, or give them that accountability, or even the coaching staff, because like a lot of our players will have that freshman football, or they'll have the practice squads where they're constantly interacting with those seniors. They didn't have that.
Right.
So when they come into the facility, they're almost clueless, which is scary.
Well, and here's what I brought up to you. I was like, I think every year over the past, I don't know, we've been doing this for 10 years, but I've really started to notice it over the past 6 to 7. Every incoming freshman to our high school program has had just a little bit less of like what we call that baseball IQ or understanding of where they're at in their development process. And it's just continuously got a little less, a little less, a little less. I think, personally, it's because of a mixture of things. I think they're watching the game less on TV. You hear that all the time. We've talked about in podcasts. They don't watch baseball. It is not a thing anymore. They might play fantasy baseball, but they don't watch it. They don't get a whole lot of practice development at the youth levels. And what I mean by that is they're not on a field learning simple double cuts, learning simple things about the game. They're playing more. I think actually games might have gone up because of tournament companies, because of leagues. Just there's so many different options out there that are affordable to players and teams. So maybe games have gone up, but literal practice and learning from situations, and that has gone down.
Well, I would agree with that because a lot of teams that we have, they're pushing that 80 mark, that 90 mark. Some are even going to that 110 mark, which is impressive. That's awesome. Don't get me wrong. I think that is great.
Yeah.
But the problem with games is that you can't stop the game and explain what happened there and really teach that specific moment.
Right.
Where in junior college baseball, I've said this in the past, junior college baseball was by far the best school for me when it came to learning the game. I called my dad my freshman year and I said, this feels like I'm in spring training right now. If spring training's like this, I'm all in on it because I'm learning so much about the game, the ins and the outs, the cuts. And the coaches they demanded a lot from us, but they were willing to teach that. That's where I think with youth baseball is that it's mostly games. You're competing to win, which is what you should do, but you're not getting the, like you said, double cuts.
Well, the small subtleties of the game that people just don't get. And that even rolls over into the development side of things.
Or even the etiquette of the game.
And so here's why this topic's been brought up, because within our program, at least in our St. Louis area, and I know this for a fact in our other markets as well, there's a clear difference between what's being taught at the high school level and what's being taught at the youth level. So at the high school level, just for reference so you guys understand, that's when we fully take over as a staff, all of their development training, their schedules, everything. We are 100% hands-on in that area, whereas at the youth level, the coach has more hands-on duty with them. We do provide training and things of that nature, but we're not in 100% control of it. So what happens is what I'm understanding and seeing now is freshmen every single year are coming in with a much lower understanding overall of where they're at in their game and what they should be focusing on. So we start off with, like on my pitching side, we start off with all this brand new arm care work, like literally telling them the importance of arm care. They don't even understand any of that. They have no clue, no concept.
And I don't think it's the fault of the coach.
I don't at all.
Because the coach is doing the best he possibly can, which again, that's perfectly fine. Like that's what we're here for. So when they get to high school, you're stepping up to a whole nother level. My biggest issue is that they're not prepared for that moment when a coach gets into them.
Sure.
They curl up, and again, you're young, I'm bigger, Dave, you're a big dude, scary coaches. At the end of the day, we're not here to scare you. We're here to get you better. And it's just the simple thought of the process of what happens at practice. Okay, I go to stretching. Then I actually go into a talk with our coach. Then I go into my training. Then after that, I do my cool down. Then after that, then we have a talk. Oh, we have to clean up the cage. There are not many players that know that they have to clean up a cage, which is not good. Like, I literally had to direct them, hey, after the end of the session, we have to clean up the cage. Oh, we do? Yeah. Who cleaned it up for you? Oh, that was our coaches. Which again, I totally get it because you're stressed on time for cages.
You're a product of your environment.
Yeah. So like I think the best thing for people to go into winter training, heading into the year, is like, for a coach, what do I want to teach these players? And a lot of the 13s and 14s, I know that we have a couple coaches out there that are not a couple, a lot of coaches out there that are 13s and 14s that are thinking, how do I prepare my player for high school? Well, one, setting up a routine. That's super important. You have to set up a routine. What does the beginning of practice look like? What does the end of practice look like? Mm-hmm. How do we handle our stuff at beginning of a game and then after a game? Also, what is the routine of the specific player? How can I get a pitching routine? How can I get my positional players to have a hitting routine when they cop in the cage where I don't have to say anything? They literally go do it. That's the point that you want to get at.
And I've always seen it in this kind of like a ladder or a pyramid. And I talk about this with players all the time. Like, there is a pyramid out there called Maslow's hierarchy of needs, okay? And it refers to the needs of a human being and how it grows and evolves up that pyramid, and to where at the base level, you need, what is it? I mean, it's just basic needs. It's shelter, whatever, and it goes up. But I have that need for sports.
You have it up there. You have psychological needs, safety needs, belonging and loving needs, esteem needs, self-actualization.
Yeah, so you can't get to the top if you don't have the bottom layers, right? Mm-hmm. So I kind of view baseball as the same thing in the way we develop players. At the younger levels, let's say players 11U and under, okay, haven't got to middle school yet, okay? They're learning the game. They're having fun. That should be the goal. It shouldn't be a win at all costs. Obviously, competition is important at that area, but we want to keep kids in the game at that age. We want to make sure that they're having a great experience, learning more about the game, learning the basics, the ins and outs.
But more importantly, having fun.
And that's exactly
just getting
where
them
it's
out
being.
there and doing the actions.
Yeah, being around your teammates, enjoying the game.
The expectations are a lot lower.
Correct. And then I kind of feel like there's a shift. Then you get to 12 to 14U type baseball, okay? And again, this is where I think that players should start to get a little bit more serious about the game. They should start to think about, well, if I am going to continue to play this and get to the next level, which would be high school baseball, I need to start learning the game a little bit more in depth. Now, I certainly don't expect players to have the self-realization to take that. Okay, I don't expect them to do that. What I do expect is hopefully coaches start to make that change for them and start to impress upon them that if you want to continue to take this further, there's going to be a bigger time commitment. There's going to be more information that you need to bring in. You're going to need to change the way you look at the game, okay? And more stuff needs to be brought in, right?
And what age is that you're saying?
12 to 14.
12 to 14.
Okay, so basically your middle school age groups for most people across the country. Then again, there's another shift. Now I'm going into what I would consider 15 and 16U type baseball, okay? So you're just into high school. Well, for us, a lot of people will say, well, my high school program is all about getting them on to the next level, into college, into professional baseball. Not for us. My next goal for you is now the level of development has to shift. We have to start giving you information and feeding you and putting you into situations that are going to make you a productive member of your high school team. Okay, I think people often skip that goal. They often think, well, right away I should be thinking about college when they haven't even contributed at a varsity level yet. Okay, so they need to start to, again, make a shift, make a jump, start what we're doing right now. Like even these first 2 weeks of training, we have broken down their thought process. Now they see that there is a drastic new world of baseball development out there that they didn't even know. Like, why are we throwing around these med balls for rotational acceleration? How does that translate to the mound? How does what we're doing from a hitting standpoint, again, how does it all translate, and why are we doing these certain things? They're barely starting to get it, but they're getting it. Week 1, they're lost. It's like kind of restructuring the way they think about baseball.
And going back to your original point, in years past, it was able just to go straight into that. Now we're actually trying to establish a routine, which again,
Correct.
we're now 3, 4, 5 steps behind.
Correct.
And for high school coaches, like the varsity level, if you are a freshman who thinks, oh, I'm going to go in there guns a-blazing and I'm going to be a varsity starter. Well, just to let you know, if you don't have a routine down, you're probably not going to start varsity unless you throw like 93 or 88 or 89, like somewhere in that range, or you're just a fantastic hitter.
Yeah, you're just a physical specimen.
Yeah, if you don't have a routine, the coach does not have the time because a high school season is not very long. So you have to be jumping on board, knowing what that routine is and know where to go and where to stand and where to be at all times. That's the biggest thing. If you're able to do that as a freshman, you've already separated yourself from everybody else right now because it's going to get worse.
Yep.
It's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. So if you're a player listening to this and I want to be a varsity starter, get your routine down.
Well, it's kind of like this. It's like, I think it's kind of the ability of how can you handle all the information that's about to be thrown at you in all the situations. If you come into that high school level with a basic understanding of a routine, you've been taught certain small subtleties of the game and everything else. But when all of a sudden a high school coach approaches you with this, what you would assume is a higher level of information, then you're not going to be lost and freaked out and have that deer in the headlights look. You're going to be like, oh, okay, I can kind of see how this goes and I can see the path, right? But unfortunately, most kids are coming into that, and when we approach them with this information, it is that deer in the headlights look. It's like, whoa.
Well, and I think that deals with insecurities too. Because, I mean, think about it. Middle school, high school, there's a lot of insecurities there.
Sure.
There's a lot of example. One of our players last night when I was doing fielding, we were doing the speed ladder. He had it right. He literally was doing the speed ladder drill that I was telling him to do completely right. But literally halfway through it, he ended up saying, oh, this is wrong. Oh, no, this is wrong. I'm doing it wrong. Like, started freaking out, which, again, I have to deal with those insecurities.
Again, scared of failure.
Yeah, scared of failure,
in
right?
front of other people, peers.
Yep. And as a coach, you got to deliver that confidence into them. Like, hey, you're doing this right. You're doing it. You're on the right track. If they have that routine, you establish that routine, you're doing the right thing. When I was able to do that, he literally stepped away from the situation. And then next time he came through, he was a lot more confident on that movement.
Well, even again, take it back to the fact that, again, not many players deal with adversity or failure very well in that middle stage group before they get to us. Because let's put it this way. What's the culture that's being developed now? If I don't play for a certain team or I don't win enough, what do? I switch teams. I go find another one, right? What if
the team ends up becoming your identity, which is not your identity.
Sure. Or, okay, we lose a game on Sunday and we don't make it to the championship rounds because the umpire screwed us, right? Or all these other things that instead of basically saying it's okay to fail, you're going to fail. How do you react to it? How are we going to talk about these adversity type situations at a younger level? If you start to incorporate that type of information earlier, then the situation that occurred with you last night where that player's going through the speed ladder, he kind of fails. Well, he pushes through that hurdle. He pushes through that wall because he knows it's okay. He knows that that's all part of the process. And that's where I think it's our job as guys who've been in this game for a while and have been around coaching and kind of understand this evolutionary pyramid. It's our job to not only pass it down to the players, but I think we have a lot of eager coaches who might be dads or might be, just in it to really help, because that is the base goal. They're all in it to help, but they might not know. They might not get it. So it's our job to kind of talk about that.
Which this goes back to the first solution out of trying to reach that next level in 2021, going into winter training, is that you need a driver.
Yep.
And the driver could be one of three people. It could be the influential coach, it could be the supportive parent, or it could be a player who is just filled with absolute desire. Now, here's the thing, is that the player that's filled with absolute desire, he still needs the supportive parent or the influential coach.
Yep.
Those are two big people, stars, that needs to happen. Now, you don't have to have the absolute desire as a player right away, because everyone grows in their maturity at different stages. There are some, example, one of my friends who is a CrossFit athlete and he's at the top of his game right now. He matured at a very late age. We were talking about it when we were in junior college. He was a backup outfielder for us, still a role player, very good though, but he was still a backup player. We were talking about it and I was like, you still haven't grown a beard yet. And this is our sophomore year. And he's like, yeah, it's just our genetics. Like, for whatever reason, our family, we mature out completely different. And his thought process was completely different too. He was a lot younger minded than me. He didn't have that thought of, oh, this is what I want to accomplish. This is my goal. This is what I want to do. He just his baseball career kind of went through it, right? Now he got sucked into CrossFit and just loves everything about it. And now he's at the top of his game, and he's sponsored athlete, you name it. He's doing it.
Sure.
So from a standpoint that you don't have to have if you're an athlete, you don't have to have that complete desire right away, but you do need that supportive parent or that influential coach. That will keep the ball moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I think that's where our role is. That what you have to understand too is everybody comes from a different background, a different system, a different team. You know, our high school program in generalities is a melting pot of athletes, right? I mean, we've got guys who have played at the highest level possible, that have gone on and played in massive national tournaments and been exposed to so much. We have other guys who've just played regionally, other guys who are on different development scales. And it's a job for us as coaches to kind of bring them all together, and also treating them all differently. And everybody learns different. Everyone says this. But I still think what we're talking about is now, for two-player example, Billy over here, who might have been exposed to this at a younger level, okay, I can maybe teach him some different things right now. I can go up that Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I might be on step 5, okay? Whereas John, who hasn't been exposed to that, maybe I need to be on step 2 with him. We're still working towards it. They might not get there at the same time, but we're still working up that pyramid. And that's a concept that I think as we go through this podcast session right here, I want people to understand that as long as you're working up that pyramid, that's the correct path. Again, that pyramid, the slope might be different for different people, but as long as the slope's going up, I think that's important in terms of what you're transmitting from an information standpoint, in terms of what you're doing from a development standpoint, just the way you go about it. And that's where I think so much I think people plateau and just flatline, because the goal is always about winning or always about the moment, and not understanding that we have a process to play. And even as I was going along in that example, as we then get to the 17, 18-year-old guys, which I think is the clear next step, is now you're a varsity contributor, you're playing, you're excelling. Now you have that opportunity to start looking at college. And I have to understand my role as a coach. I'm not a college coach. I have to prepare them for that. We have to put them in situations that are going to get them accustomed to that, and treat them with information and treat them the way that a college coach will eventually do it, so that when they get to that next level, it's not a shock factor and they quit. And then again, the college coach is the same thing, and they're continuously working, and they treat freshmen as different than juniors. And it's just that process. It's that evolutionary process through this game.
And that goes to my second point, is that you have to know you. You have to know you. If you don't know yourself, and again, this goes back to, am I a single sport guy? Am I a multi-sport guy? How does that fit into my schedule? How does that fit in my routine? Those are big factors, and you absolutely hit every single point that I wanted to make on that, which is you have to know you. And then once you know you, then you can start doing the research. What is it that I absolutely need? If you're a multi-sport athlete, you might not need a trainer where you're doing strength training and doing all that, because your time is consumed with school and sports.
Yeah.
But if you are a 2-sport athlete or a 1-sport athlete, maybe you do need that trainer. Maybe you do need that person that's able to give you a better routine on how to attack your winter training. Then you need to know, okay, what facility do I want to train at? What instructor do I want for hitting and pitching and throwing and fielding? You name it. What do I need there? And then also, does it fit in my price point? Is it in my budget? Mm-hmm. If I'm able to do that and be able to know my time commitment to school and my sports, and then also what am I going to be able to do for the next level of my game in baseball, if baseball or softball is your sport.
I think, again, you hit the nail on the head. That to me is the hardest part, though. The self-evaluation, the understanding of what my
it's
next
super
step
hard.
is.
It sounds easy, but it's
I honestly,
ridiculously
I'll
hard.
give you a great example. I don't think I understood that about myself until I was 20, 21 years old. And then even at that point, I think I had a rough idea of what I had to do and what I needed to do. So it's really tough for me to think that a high school or middle school or even younger athlete understands that. However, that is, again, where I feel like case in point, one of my sections in every recruiting meeting I ever have is a self-evaluation, like assessing yourself as a player. Because in order to understand what college you need to be approaching and looking at, you have to understand what level you're at. You have to understand where your game's at.
Well,
okay?
Can I interject for
Yeah,
1
go
second?
ahead.
Is that before all that, you have to know what you want.
Correct.
That's the big
Correct.
thing. You have to know what you want. All this stuff that we're talking about is all great and grand, but
Correct.
if you have no idea what you want, that's where you have to start.
100%. But that's where, going back, that's where your support system lies. If you have a good support system from your parents to your coaches who are willing to have the tough conversations with you, like from a coach, I have to be 100% honest with you. If you ask the question of what I need to work on, you have to be willing to accept the answers that I'm going to give you. You might not like it. It might hurt your feelings a little bit, but ultimately that answer is going to be the truth. And that truth is going to help you more than you ever know it, if you're willing to accept it. Your parents have to be there to keep you on that path. Obviously, you're at a much different place in life. You can see where that player is going based on your own faults and your own successes in the past. So you need to be able to keep them on that. But as a player, you have to be willing to ask those hard questions. To go back to the first thing we said in this podcast, I ask the same question every year in this time frame. What do we need to work on based on what happened last year? And no player can answer it. They cannot do it because they haven't had that conversation.
That's the big thing, is that's part of development. We can't sit here and say, well, why don't you know it? I don't understand why you don't know
Correct.
it. Either A, it's got to be a supportive parent, or B, it's got to be an influential coach.
Right.
And I think from the frustrating part of from our standpoint is that we are hoping that conversation for the freshman happened earlier.
Sure.
Which, again, if it hasn't, I totally get it. I've got to have that conversation. What is it that you want? The world is your oyster. What is it that you want to go after? Well, I want to be a D1 athlete. Okay, well, what D1 school? Well, I want to go to LSU. Well, that's a Power 5 school. What type of stuff needs to happen for that Power 5 school? Well, I never thought about that. Well, we got to research that. If you don't know, we've got to research it. Now you have to do your self-actualization. Am I that type of player? You might not be there right now. You might have the genetics. Now, how do we get there? Because all of that plays a factor.
Yep.
This goes back to the last thing I want to say is not the last thing, it's the second to last thing, is understand your goals with clear conviction. When we talked about that, when you said I have that recruiting meeting, you have to know what you want. And it has to be with conviction. It can't be, well, I kind of want this or I kind of want that. That becomes decisive. Like Shandi for food is the most indecisive person ever. And it bugs the living hell out of me. If you're a husband, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about right now. It seems like every woman is like that. They have no idea what they want when it comes to
I'm
food.
staying silent.
When they
If my wife is listening, I'm staying silent.
when they want food, like, well, I kind of want this, I kind of want that. You gotta have conviction. We all have that at some point.
Sure.
I'm decisive on certain things, and she's decisive anyways. But with this, on your thing, the thing that you want most, what is it that you want? Write it down, and then sit on it for 2 weeks, and then go back to it and be like, I still want that. That's what I want.
Well, I think the biggest issue, again, you're 100% correct. When you ask a player that question, okay, and let's say you can, whether it's the question of what do you want to work on this offseason, or the question of where do you want to go to college, or whatever, the answer is hard for them to find, one, because they haven't done the time and the research to get that answer. The easy answers of saying I want to go to a Power 5 school or I want to throw harder, those are easy. The hard answers of I want to work on this certain part of my swing because I can see this is going to happen, or I want to work on this time of my pitchability because this is going to help me, or that I want to go to this exact school because of these reasons, educationally, athletically, socially, distance-wise, is hard, right? Doing the research, putting the time in, literally asking the tough questions is going to make that picture clear. I talk about, again, I go to the recruiting example because it's the world I live in, but I talk about these things in terms of check boxes. All right, as I continue to have these conversations with parents and players, I talk about we need to find as many wants and needs as possible, okay? And you want to have all these check boxes up here because ultimately you're going to walk onto a campus and walk into a program and say, yep, and I'm checking off all these boxes. But if you haven't done the research and put in the time before, you have no idea what you want. You have no idea.
Well, that's the difference between professionalism and amateurism.
But it's the same. To me, it's the same thing from a freshman standpoint. They don't have any idea.
Which the conversations need to be had. That's
Correct.
the thing.
That's what we're talking
Like
about.
if you have a player or a son, daughter, and they don't know, like, oh, I don't know what he really wants to do, ask them.
Yeah, stop.
Start the conversation. My mom, we used to drive everywhere, like for school, I did Cub Scouts, I did art class, I did all this stuff, and she would drive me all over the place. But her favorite moments were those car rides because she would literally ask me these things because she wanted to dig deeper. Now, again, she's a teacher. She dealt with kids all her life. She ended up raising her brother and sister. She knew what to do because she already had that experience. Now, there's some people out there that don't have that experience, sure. And it's not their fault. The thing, though, is you got to start the conversation at some point. You'll be surprised when you ask questions to a player where he's really interested. Start with something that they're super interested in. If they play video games, let's talk about Call of Duty. If you're interested in watching basketball, let's talk about LeBron James. Let's talk about Kobe Bryant because that's a huge culture thing for them, right? Then you can start opening up the door. You can start prying that thing open because that is literally the blueprint of what I do when I have a fielding clinic or I have an instructing moment where it's just me and him on a one-on-one lesson or me and her on a one-on-one lesson. I want to figure out what is it that you like. I want to know you. Then once they open up and then be like, now I can know where their values are and where they really put their thoughts into. Because then I can actually tailor the conversation exactly where I want it to go. And then I can get them to be inspired to do something bigger and better than what they're imagining right now. Because they all want it. They all want the big thing. They all want to be the person.
That's the common thing.
Yeah.
Everybody wants it. Everybody has a dream. They all want to be that person, that successful person in whatever asset.
There's not one person out there that says, I want to be the biggest scumbag alive.
Right.
I want to be just not doing anything. Right. There's not one person out there that wants to be that way. They just end up falling into that trap.
That's where it all goes back. It's got to be a continuous type of a conversation that is continuously evolving and always has, we've talked about in the past, it always has those future goals in mind, and we're always working towards that. And we can never plateau, we can never flatline because we get shifted off of that topic.
The last point I want to make, which is it seems like it's always the last point, is action. You got to provide that action. You've got to do it. If you're able to do it, things will fall into place. You might make a mistake. You might say something that you will regret, but then you're able to come back and actually change that conversation again. You just got to be willing to make the mistakes.
Gonna fail, but you learn more from your failure than your success.
What's your closing pitch, Dave?
I would say this. I like this topic because it's the way my brain works. I always work in like a process type mindset. It's always step by step. And so what I kind of brought to attention during the middle of this podcast was that kind of pyramid, okay, if you will, in the baseball and softball world of development, and at least in what we deal with ages 5 to 18U. And you have your beginning stages, your 5 to 11. We're trying to teach the game, have fun, have a great experience, make it exciting, make kids really learn to love it. And then it starts to evolve, and then it evolves more. 12 to 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. It continuously evolves up. As long as we always have a clear idea of the next step going forward and how we can get these athletes to understand what they need to know and prepare them for the next step, while at the same time keeping the game fun, exciting, challenging, all the things that we talk about on a daily basis, then I think we're pushing them in the right direction. But you always have to have that next step in mind. Like, this can't be the win-all. This can't be the last thing, that this is the best experience you have. I want all of my high school athletes to go on to the next level and experience that if they want to. But it's my job as a coach and as a director of this program to give you enough information and the right information so that when you get to that next level, that you succeed. That is so much more important to me than any championship I ever win at the high school level. It's so much more important. I would much rather look up and see you as a successful adult at the college level, learning, being, basically succeeding at that level. That is the best championship that I can get.
Everyone starts at 0. Everyone, no matter what topic it is. And then some people might be stuck at 20 or 30 or 40. I'm talking about like a level, just how you're saying with the pyramid. If we understand that, it's a lot better. Now we know, okay, where is this person lying on this scale? And then how do I actually move them towards 100? How do I get them towards that 100 goal? That's how I kind of view the winter training plan. That's kind of how I view trying to grow my own skills, is where do I lie in this topic? Well, I'm here. Do I find this interesting? No. Well, I probably should punt this. I don't want to go on this anymore. But this, I really like this. I'm at like 5 right now. I feel like a dummy. Now I got to get to 80. How do I get there? And then I start attacking it, and I start making my mistakes. I think that's the biggest thing out of this conversation is you're going to start at 0. Everyone does. Don't get frustrated if you see someone at 80 and you're at 20. That's my closing pitch.
Good topic.
All right, guys, thanks so much for listening to this episode of The Closing Pitch. My name is Spiker Helms. Across from me is David Birkby. We are 2 national directors for the Rawlings Tigers. Dave is on the coaching, instructing, and sales and high school director, you name it. We're both Swiss Army knives just in general. And podcasting is not our regular deal. This is not our full-time gig. This is something that we wanted to get into and share information because we see that there's a culture shift, and we want to make sure that the culture is shifting in the right direction. If you believe in the same thing, please give us a follow. Please give us a subscribe. Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We're also on other podcasting platforms. I don't know. We use Anchor, and they just start spreading our podcast all over the place. So whatever platform you're using, please hit that subscribe or follow. If you are a repeat listener, please go to Apple Podcasts and write us a review. It's very simple, very easy. All you need to do is pull up the Apple Podcast app. If you are an Android user, just go on to the desktop version, go to Apple Podcasts, find our podcast, and then end up going to the write review section. Hit the write review section. It'll prompt you, and then you can write your review. Give us a 5-star rating, preferably, and we will then catch you on the next episode because you're already subscribed. Thanks, guys.
See ya.
Thank you for watching or listening or both to The Closing Pitch. If you would like to get your closing pitch featured on the show, we use a podcasting app called Anchor where you can submit your statement or question via audio. Or what you can do is comment in the comment section of this post. We also accept direct messages. Please give us the A-OK if you do send us a DM to use your statement or question on the show. Last thing, please give us a review on your platform of choice. 5-star preferably, and we value your opinion, and this allows us to reach more people. Thank you for listening, and we will catch you in the next episode.